It's wonderful about going back to Bernays is that this is a time when the PMC would just come out and say what its function is, what it aims to do, why it's important. And so he just comes out and says, look, people think that they're a part of a rational society, a part of a rational discourse. They're not. They're actually just copying and pasting. They're just rubber stamping ideas, passing the word along, which means that there needs to be people who prepackage those ideas, who kind of do the handling of the ideas before they ever reach the so-called decision makers. Meaning that before you ever get to decide about, for instance, a political candidate, there's already been a bunch of people in the decision-making process who decided who you get to choose between, right? This is something that people say, oh no, it's a death of democracy. And he's over here saying, no, it's the only real way that you can have a democracy, right? He's defending something that's considered taboo. It's not something that people want to defend. And nowadays, it's something that everyone goes, oh, you sound like a conspiracy theorist for talking like that, right? Today's PMC goes, oh no, we have a democracy, and all this idea that we're manipulated and that it's all propaganda, that these financial interests are so formative on all of the information that you receive. Oh, that sounds like conspiracy theory stuff. Now you sound like Trump. You're talking about fake news. That's what you're doing. Bernays is a breath of fresh air because he's like, nah, man, it's just the facts. This is just what we actually have to do for any successful idea to take off, okay? So the part that we're going to focus in on here is just 3 quotes that I'll read off. He says, propaganda takes account not merely of the individual, nor even the mass mind alone, but also and especially of the anatomy of society, with its interlocking group of formations and loyalties. It sees the individual not only as a cell in the social organism, but as a cell organized into the social unit. Touch a nerve at a sensitive spot and you get an automatic response from certain specific members of the organism. This is a way of seeing the human population that is becoming more popular today in the age of platform capitalism, because now people talk about, oh, that idea should not be platformed. That idea sets off this reaction. So people are beginning to think about themselves in this way that Edward Bernays wanted us to be thinking. Well, he didn't want us to be thinking of it. He wanted capitalists to be thinking of us this way. But now we're kind of taking it on ourselves. Now we are doing the DIY version of this. Now we're all trying to police what gets onto the platform, what gets out to the people. And this makes us feel like we have some kind of a role in it, like we're somehow participants in it, right? At the time that he's writing, though, this is for elite people to sit around and talk about doing to the regular populace. Right? But this idea of touching a nerve or a sensitive spot in the population to get certain automatic reactions, this is how marketers and propagandists think, which means that when a story, a news item is run, they watch for the effects and they see what's reactive, and whatever is like reactive, they see how can we make that reaction somehow beneficial to us. So that means that if there's a kind of news item or sort of topic that gets your blood going, in a sort of sense, they're paying close attention to that, right? That is what big data analysis is all about today. He says, ideas are sifted and opinions stereotyped in the neighborhood bridge club. Leaders assert their authority through community drives and amateur theatricals. Thousands of women may unconsciously belong to a sorority which follows the fashions set by a single society leader. One of the things that we are interested in here is how things have changed. One of the things that Nance and I focused on in our B-side reading of the first few chapters of Propaganda was how that dynamic there has changed. Nobody's in a neighborhood bridge club anymore. Instead, we're part of consumer demographics on the internet. That's how we all got to meet. That's how we've all been organized. But he gives an example of the civic man. And so we have within CMT, within the CMT research cohort here now, a new jargon, and that is Jim Jones. Jim Jones is our shorthand for the civic man, as opposed to the atomized, disenfranchised, antisocial man, which is Joe Sixpack. So Joe Sixpack comes back and watches TV or scrolls on his phone while drinking from his six-pack, as opposed to John Jones. I said Jim Jones, but I meant John Jones. Here's what I mean. I'll read the quote. John Jones, besides being a Rotarian, is member of a church, of a fraternal order, of a political party, of a charitable organization, of a professional association, of a local chamber of commerce, of a league for or against prohibition, or of a society for or against lowering the tariff, and of a golf club. The opinions which he receives as a Rotarian, he will tend to disseminate in the other groups in which he may have influence. So the model in the 1930s is find the key players in the key civic organizations, sponsor their asses. Get them to take on certain ideas. For instance, you might have the most famous sort of sorority leader type women, the popular ones, start wearing purple, or start wearing velvet, or start wearing, which is an example that he uses, is this idea of like this high society, oh, velvet now, everything's velvet now. Or Bernays is famous for getting women to smoke cigarettes. It wasn't popular, so he introduces the slim cigarette and sets up like this fake media stunt, right? Basically, they paid a bunch of actresses to go join this women's protest smoking these long, skinny cigarettes. Why? To popularize the idea that the man doesn't want you to smoke cigarettes. So this is actually a part of women's liberation. He actually planned journalists writing outrage articles about how dare these women smoke cigarettes, so that it does look like they're actually resisting something, right? So he successfully got women to smoke cigarettes. This is the kind of thing that he was doing that had Colombian Rope Factory paying him more per year than the actual president of the company. But John Jones, I just listed, 10 different civic organizations that he's a part of? What has replaced those civic organizations today? You are a part of this CMT research cohort. You might be a part of maybe you get together with some friends to watch a movie once a week. Maybe you get together with people at your church. Maybe you but most people only have one or two other things. This is part of the result of the structural stultification of our time energy. This is a part of the result of social fragmentation, of everyone constantly moving, of everyone not being able to afford to put roots down in an area. This is part of, so everyone's constantly on the move, everything solid melts into air, and what we have left is a bunch of garbage time to scroll our phones. And so instead of being a part of 10 different civic organizations with real life places and times that you meet up with other human beings, you're instead a hashtag or a collection of hashtags. You are what you scroll, right? And so the principles of what Bernays is talking about are still applicable, except that it's moved from key figures in civic organizations with real leaders into hashtags with influencers.